Hey, do you ever have those nights where you just want to veg out and watch some TV, and there's just nothing on? Maybe I'm the only one, but I'm just going to assume that you follow me on that one, Pentecostal church. I hear an amen on that? I mean, is that like summertime especially, and even Christmas time, you're going, where do my shows go? And I got to deal with this stuff. So my wife and I, sometimes that happens to us. There's nothing on. Every channel is just a dud. And so, but when that happens, one of our default shows that we have turned to quite a bit is Family Feud. Always get good stuff out of Family Feud, right? You learn so much about people. It's a total sociological study. Craziness, Steve Harvey. He's a new story in itself, but that is the show we go to. And a few years back, there's a question on the show that kind of stuck with me, and I had to go back and find it again. But it was this one that I thought was very telling. It was poor people worry about money. What do rich people worry about? Now, there's 5 categories of answers you could have, but the top one, 70%, was money. And you would think that, maybe it'd be a little farther down the list at least, but it was the number one thing because true of everybody, rich or poor, whether you are a billionaire or you are struggling to make ends meet that month, is that money is always an object of worry because we know it's wrapped up into it. Now, the problem with worry, right, whenever you have worry, here's the next question that comes to mind when you experience worry on money or stuff or whatnot. It's the question, how do I get more? As soon as you feel worry about something, about money especially, your next question is, well, how do I get more of it so I don't worry as much? Thinking that that's the solution to it all. How do I get more money? How do I get more stuff? Because if I had more stuff, then I would have more security. If I had more money, then I'd have a better future. I can go on those vacations. I can buy those shoes. I can go to those restaurants. All that I think that the really happy people are at. And I'm stuck going to Taco Bell. I'm stuck, eating top ramen. And that's not what happy people do. That's what fulfilled people do. That is not the American dream. And so the question always sits, when you worry about something, is how do I get more? Now, if you've done any extra reading in your world, then you'll have found out that hasn't really helped our culture out very much. While we are the richest nation in the world, we are also the most depressed. People going to psychologists all the time and taking drugs here and there because depression and worry and anxiety floods our nation, which means something's not working there. So this morning, what I want to do is I want to present to you that maybe we're asking the wrong question when we're faced with a dilemma. Maybe the question we should be asking is, how do I get more, or how do we get more? But maybe it should be something else. So I want to introduce you this morning. In fact, Jesus, in the text we're looking at, Luke 12, gets approached by an individual who is stressed about his money. In fact, he looks down the pipeline of the future and says, how do I get more? And Jesus, in this conversation, redirects his question to another one that he really should be asking, that as you take that one to its final end, really becomes the question that we all should be asking in that moment, because it's what God wants us to move toward and how he provides for us. So we're going to explore that question this morning in Luke chapter 12. If you haven't turned there, you can. I will have the text on the screen for you, but like I'll say most weeks, if you have a Bible at your house, bring it. If you have it in your hand, open it. It's worthwhile to kind of get muscle memory about where different things are at. You can go back and look it up again in the future. So Luke 12, let me just set the stage for verse 13 where we're going to pick up this morning. Jesus' ministry, he's been around for a year and a half maybe. His popularity is kind of at an all-time high. People are crowding around to see him. On this particular event, it says thousands and thousands of people are there. Literally, thousands of people are there. And they're literally trampling on each other to get close to Jesus. The picture that came to mind was those Black Friday crowds trying to get into a store, right? It's the season that's kicking off of generosity and kindness and joy, and yet people are hitting a bloodbath to get their stuff, right? Here's people coming to Jesus, who is a preacher of love, we might say, and also of generosity and kindness, and to get to him, they are trampling over each other. And so Jesus, seeing the commotion surrounding him, turns to his disciples and starts talking about the hypocrisy that's in our hearts. See, guys, there's so much hypocrisy. They want to come and hear about me and hear what I have to say, and they're killing each other. They're disregarding each other. They're not loving each other to hear a message of love. The hypocrisy that's out there, don't give into that. In the middle of that conversation with the disciples, Someone in the crowd who got his way to the very front inserts a question, has the audacity, we might say, to insert his question to Jesus. Verse 13. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Now, if you are an individual in a crowd, let's say at Black Friday, and you push your way to the front, you either got there really early or you were violently aggressive in getting to that spot, right? I can tell you that that person, it mattered to them they got in that door first. This guy got to the front because he had a question that he was all worked up over. And his question was pretty legitimate, you might say, is that his parents had died. Maybe 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, but within the matter of time, they had died. And his brother, his older brother, wasn't sharing the inheritance. Now, a little backstory to understand this in that culture is that whenever a parents died, their oldest son became the executor of the estate. They're the ones who managed the money and kind of divvied it out according to their desires. And the older brother would get, kind of by law, a double portion of what everybody else got. Well, this guy was deciding to keep all the money for himself. And you can imagine just the frustration as a sibling you would feel if your brother was doing the same to you. And let me tell you why you would feel that way. Because even though you loved your parents, part of you was thinking about what you'd use the money for. And you'd be, man, they are stealing from me that money that I was going to use for this, that, and the other. And this guy is no different. This guy he is fed up with his brother in a huge way. And he has a case to bring because Jesus, after all, is a preacher of justice. He's a guy who loves justice, a guy who loves righteousness and right dealing. So obviously, if you have a case that involves justice, bring it to him. So he's going to the right spot, and he has a case. And I think that this guy who is asking Jesus the question, he has brought his brother with him. And the reason I think that is because in order for him to say to Jesus, hey, tell my brother to give me my portion of the inheritance, he's got to be there to tell him. So he's leveraging the public environment to put pressure on his brother to get him what he wants. And Jesus says this. He said to them, the crowd now, I'm going to take this scenario. You guys, let me tell you the question that was asked, kind of like one of those shows, right? Let me tell you the question that was asked. Let me speak into that. He addresses the crowd. Take care and be on your guard against all covetousness or all kinds of greed, because they don't all come in just one form. They come in many forms. For one's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. This guy was saying, Jesus, fix my brother's greed. And Jesus is saying, well, there's a problem here because you've got the same problem he does. You are just as greedy as your brother. See, there's a problem. He couldn't see it. He couldn't see it because he cloaked it in other language. Greed is easy to see in somebody else, but it's hard to see in yourself, which is why greedy people never say, I'm greedy. Greedy people just don't say that. Here's what they say. Here's kind of language that greedy people use, and see if you've ever used this before. Well, I'm just looking for my fair share. What's rightfully mine? That's all I'm going for here. That was his argument right there. Just give me what's rightfully mine. Or maybe, I'm just very, very, what's the right word for it? Careful. Very careful. Or as my son would say with his toys, Daddy, tell him to share. It's important that we share, isn't it, Daddy? Well, yeah, those are all true in certain contexts, but notice this guy wasn't coming to Jesus about somebody else's issue. It's one that moved his heart. It's one that entailed his well-being, one that he got more from. And Jesus, in his kind of statement here, why do you bring this to me? Like, am I the arbiter? Am I the judge of this? Why are you bringing this to me? It's not saying that I don't care about justice in your life, but there's something more dangerous going on here than your brother's greed. There's something more dangerous to you than the greed of your brother and him withholding the funds. So the question he's asking to this guy is, or that guy is asking, how do I get more? How do I get more stuff? How do I get more? And Jesus is saying, well, why do you want more? Why do you want more? And his answer is, because more stuff equals more life. That's what Jesus kind of stated here. For life, one's life does not consist in the abundance of one's possessions. He was thinking that the more stuff I had, the more life I had. And Jesus needed to speak into this because the most destructive thing in that conversation wasn't his brother's greed, it was his greed. That was the problem. He was driven by this idea that life is wrapped up in what you have. He believed that his future, that his joy, that his security, that his peace in some way could be lessened or increased by what he had or didn't have. And Jesus knew that that was more destructive to him than the fact that his brother's greed was holding money that he had desired and planned for. Because you cannot serve both God and money. That's what Jesus had said at one point in his ministry. So Jesus, trying to make this point to him, trying to help him see this picture, the dangers that he sits in, tells him a story. In verse 16, Jesus says, or the text says, he told them a parable, saying, the land of a rich man produced plentifully. I'm going to stop right there really quickly because we got to understand something about the land there. It's great that he focused that the land is what produced here because that's really important. This is an agrarian culture. Most people didn't go to the office behind a computer and do numbers crunching, right? Most people went to the fields, squatted down and tilled the soil, planted seeds. They fertilized. That's where most people moved to in their fields, and they took care of it, and they then kind of hoped that the rain would come and water those fields. And the problem with farming in that day that we don't really feel the tension on is you can do everything right and still get no yield, no crop. It could be a poor crop. It's kind of a roll the dice a little bit here. You can do everything right and still not get the product. Now this guy here had received a better than expected crop. He got more than he thought he would get. And he didn't get it through cheating or by stealing from somebody or charging him more than he should have. He did it the right way. He was honest. It just happened that God blessed him more. God gave him more than somebody else. And so he thinks to himself, and he thinks in his heart and mind, he says, what shall I do? For I have nowhere to store my crop. Now, if you ever come into a certain portion of income, whatever, that you didn't expect, you ask the same question. That's the question we are all faced with. We've all wrestled and thought in our mind, what if I won the lottery, right? You're basically asking, what would I do with it? Where will I store it? How will I manage this? And he said, I will do this. I will tear down my barns and build larger ones, and there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, be merry. Now, when I read this, I kind of know the end of the story, so I think, oh gosh, this guy's saying the wrong thing. But then I go, I say the same things myself. Man, isn't the dream that you have to earn enough money so that you have a big enough padding in your retirement fund that you can start earlier and say, hey, I can relax, eat, drink, and be merry? I mean, this isn't that far from just kind of how we just do life. In fact, you've seen those commercials, right? They're designed to produce worry in you from those financial planning places that says, how long will your retirement last for? And people are drawing lines out and stuff, and they're always stopping short, and you're going, oh man, I'm worried just watching this. I'm never going to get there. I mean, this is real life. The story he's telling isn't a made-up story. This is the real life for so many people. He just put it in hypothetical form. This is what we all experience. Now, the next verse is what gives us pause. But God said to him, fool. Let's be honest. This guy is no fool. This guy is the model. He didn't cheat anybody. He didn't spend his money away. He saved it. He prepared for the future. We all want our kids to meet a guy like that. We all want our kids to rub shoulders who instead of spending their money away, saves their money and prepare and say, hey, this is now my nest egg. This is what is kind of a bit shocking about that statement, is that when you really get down to it, that's the guy that I want my kids to model. That's what I want to do with my life. His problem, you see, wasn't that he was rich or that he had a better return on his labor than somebody else. His problem was he didn't know why. He didn't know why. When he asks, what shall I do with this? There's a why question there. Why am I being given this? There's a why question there. I don't know why. And he doesn't know why on 3 angles. And I'll refer back to your memory on this, but 3 reasons why. 1, because he believed he was the source of his prosperity. He believed he was the source of his prosperity. So I said, why do you have all this? Well, I worked hard. I worked smart, took responsibility, and here you go. I made money. That's like every conference you'll go to, right? I worked hard, I worked smarter, and I made money. The person over here didn't work as hard or as smart as me. Now, the problem with that, I'm not saying there's not some truth to this, but the problem with that, and thinking that's why I have the money, is because there have been people throughout history, if this is perhaps you, who have worked harder than you ever have, and smarter than you ever have, and have been responsible with stuff. But because of, maybe it's health issues that have held them back, that they just can't get away from one after another hospital visit or hospital stay, or opportunity because of the culture they live in or the environment or the hostility that's surrounding them, there isn't the opportunity available to them. And so they constantly, even though they would do the best with everything they had, don't have the opportunity to earn that. So it's not necessarily because you worked harder and smarter. It's because God gave you something. Deuteronomy chapter 8. The Israelites have come into the land of Canaan. This is the people in the Old Testament, God's people that he chose to work through to show himself. And they're going to come into this place, and he says, hey, I want you to be careful because something's going to start taking over you over time as you start to get some success and some wealth in you. And here's what he warns them on. He says, beware lest you say in your heart, my power and the might of my hand have gotten me this wealth. You shall remember the Lord your God, for it is he, here's the key part, who gives you the power to get wealth. It's he who gives you the power to get wealth. You're not the source. You've got responsibility. You're supposed to leverage what he's given you, but he is the one who gives. He's the one who planted you in America. He's the one who planted you in this time with the resources, with the intellect, the mind, the body, the health, you name it, to be able to pull something off. And the fact that you are actually doing it doesn't mean that you're then the source. He gave all that to you. Number 2, this guy believed his prosperity was for him. This is my crop, this is my barn, and this is here to make me happy. And so the product of what do I do with this? Well, I will be happy now. Eat, drink, be merry, relax. Here's what we have to keep in mind is that you and I are stewards of what God gives to us. I don't own. Now, this is where I get hung up so much because the deed on my house says Tim, share it. And I'm in danger of believing that. I just am. That's my house. So does my car. My phone that I have on me here, right? That's my phone. And it forgets in my mind that no, this is something that God stewarded to me, and I will be given to account how I use that. My home is given to me, and I will be given to account of how I steward that. Those aren't mine. I'm just caretakers of them. They're God's. The money I have in my wallet isn't mine. It's God. Now, guys, let's be honest. This is how we think about it. Okay, here's my money. How much will I give God? As if God's like, man, you gave an extra portion today. I am so blessed by you. I never thought you'd be so generous. And God's like, well, wait a minute. No, all of it's mine. What are you doing only giving me that much? That's all mine. What do you think let's shift this thinking. All of that came from me. All of that is mine. He believed that prosperity was for him. Now here's an important third point. He believed prosperity was a goal of life. Let me say this. It is not wrong for you to drive a better car than somebody else, or to live in a better house than somebody else, or to go to nicer vacations than somebody else. There will always, as time exists, going forward in the past, be inequality of what people have. You will always have more than somebody and always have less than somebody else. That's going to be the case throughout time going forward. So perfect equality where everybody has the same income, has the same savings account, the same houses, you name it, across the board, everything, that'll never happen. It's okay that you might have nicer stuff than somebody. That's okay. But this guy thought that generating and accumulating wealth was the goal. He felt like that accumulating that wealth was a goal. Now, generating wealth is not bad. It's not. In fact, for you to go out and start a business that other people can get jobs underneath is a good thing, and God praises it in the Proverbs all throughout. Like, this is a good thing, that you are allowing other people to come under and make money because of your ingenuity and because of the resource and the blessing God's given. But while it's good that that happens, it's not the goal. It's not the goal. Don't let anybody say that making wealth or generating wealth is wrong. It's good, but it isn't the goal. And let me tell you why it's not the goal. It's what Jesus says next in this, or what God says next to this man. This night your soul is required of you. That's why it's not the goal. This night your soul is required of you. Now, that's not a statement of judgment of God going, oh my gosh, you said the wrong thing. I'm going to kill you right now. No, that was a statement of God saying, hey, guess what? You didn't realize this, but tonight's your final night. You thought you had a lot of time. In fact, you thought you got more time, you got more stuff, and that your life would go longer because you have better health insurance now. But I got to tell you that tonight is your night in which your life ends. Here's the truth for all of us. You and I, every one of us is going to die. And here's the caveat on that. Sooner than you like. Sooner than you like. It's going to happen to all of us. And no one's going to want it to happen when it does. And it's going to happen sooner than you want it to. This night, your soul is required of you, and you don't. If you're here, that guy had no idea, you have no idea. And I was thinking as I was looking at this morning about the Santa Barbara mudslides. I thought, gosh, just when you think you got through the fires, 19 people die in mudslides. And those people have great health insurance. They live in Montecito. Great health insurance. They had great quality organic food in their pantry. They were working out. They were living the dream. Guys, you don't know when. It can't be the goal. And the things he says that you have prepared, whose will they be? And the answer is somebody else. Who's going to get your money? Not you, somebody else. They're either going to get it because you were generous or because you died. Which one will it be? It's because you're generous, guess what? There's something more I want to say about that. It's because you died, there's nothing in store for you because of that. Everything that you have will be someone else's. And he wraps up with a warning to anyone who thinks that their wealth is for them, it's the goal. He says, so is the one who lays up treasure for himself, which isn't a bad thing in itself. But here's the problem, and is not rich toward God. Now, that last statement is sort of like, oh, what does that mean, right? You haven't really gotten to that part yet. Rich toward God, okay, that's a new phrase. Well, where do we go with that one? Well, Jesus is going to go into more conversation about this. We'll get to that in a minute, but skip down to verse 33, where he really defines what it means to be rich toward God. Verse 33, a few verses later, he says, here's what it means. Sell your possessions and give to the needy. Now, when I read that, I don't think of just like off the cuff going, man, I feel guilty about what I have now. Pastor Tim did a great job in his sermon, and so I feel guilty. I'm going to go out and sell everything I have and give it away so I don't feel guilt. It's nothing like that. This is about an intentional decision about what you have. It's a decision that you've thought about, that you plan for. It's when you take stock in what you have and go, what can I sell? What don't I need here? What can I give to somebody else? And here's what we got to be aware of, is what you think you need, you got to realize has been shaped by culture and by years in which when somebody has given something new to you, that becomes the new ceiling, or at least floor maybe, of what you need. Like this cell phone here. Back in 2000, I didn't have a cell phone. Then I got a cell phone. It was helpful. I liked it a lot better than the landline. About 3 years ago, I got an iPhone. I can't imagine life without it. I just can't. Flip phone? What do I do? This is now my new ceiling. This is my new need. I got to keep this one funded, right? See how that works? See how it works? So it takes a little bit of a sobering process and going, okay, do I really need this? I was noticing the other day that we have 6 remote control cars for our kids. They're not exactly high quality ones, but because another grandparent wants to get a car or we find one. And so we have 6 now. I go, well, do we need 6 cars? I mean, well, what if they want to play with that one instead of this one? But you think, what could we then maybe give to somebody else? Now, that's not going to break our bank or change our lifestyle, but it's that kind of idea just in all the things that we have and thinking through, leveraging those things. Now, when I look at the scripture, here's the direction it goes. The text right here implies giving to the needy. So to give what you don't need to those who have need. That's what's implied there. To give what you don't need to those that have need. But second, you see this in a lot of other places, but to give financially toward ministries that accomplish what is the heartbeat of God. And I would say in that is the Great Commission, for people to know and experience the love of Jesus Christ. For people to know and experience the love of Jesus Christ. Let me just share a bit about me really quickly as relates to that one, those two combined. So I grew up in a home in which we called it tithing. It's in which that's kind of offering, giving your money to God, right? And the tithe was 10%. So I was trained, my parents, you get $1, you give 10 cents over to God, because that's what God has asked you to do. So I was raised in that. So for me, it's very second nature to go, okay, what portion am I giving to God now? And so my whole life, it's always been 10%. I've always stretched, maybe 11%, maybe 12%. But what can I give? But 10% is the base. I don't say that to kind of toot my horn. I'm just sharing with you that second one has kind of come naturally. But here's where I fall off the cart a lot of times, is that I then think, hey, I was really generous to the church, and I see somebody has needs out here. I don't feel the same need to have to be generous with them. The giving what you don't need to those who have needs doesn't equate in my heart and mind at times. I don't do that very much. Somebody asks for $5, I think, but I might need this. That's a lot of money to give somebody. Well, you just gave hundreds to the church. I mean, Tim, you'll do fine without. You really trust me that little? Is that what you can't give $5 away? See, I work well on the budgeted, planned out, and given to the church stuff. I don't work well in the moment. Some of you are great in the moment. Man, your heart just bleeds and you'll give out some money right in the moment or to a charity or a cause in the moment. That's not the way I work. And for you need to get better at budgeting, giving in. I need to get better at moment-by-moment generosity. In the moment, not miss the opportunity to be generous. Some of you need to work on your budgeting generosity in and not make it an afterthought, but a forethought of, gosh, Lord, you've given me this kind of finance. What's my first portion to you in terms of generosity for your name and your work? It goes both ways. It's not that God wants one or the other. He wants both, a heartbeat of generosity in all ways. And I've been wrestling with that second one. And I know it means perhaps less money, perhaps than the other one, but it's still a regular recognition of giving over. And every time you give something over, you realize it's a decision that kind of gets to your heart. Because you've got to release something that meant to you security and future and peace. So that's just me. And that's my challenge to you. To think through, do you have a heart of generosity? Are you given to the things that are the heartbeat of God? Are you given to those in need? And are you given even to the ministries that are doing the work that God has called the church to be about? Are you given to the church? And Jesus doesn't say this to them because he just wants something from them. He's not trying to pad his pockets or anyone's pockets. He wants something for them, which is why the rest of that verse comes into play. He says, sell what you have and give to the needy. And here's what happens. Provide for yourselves by doing that with money bags that do not grow old, with a treasure in heaven that does not fail, where no thief approaches and no moth destroys. He's saying, I don't want something from you. I want something for you, but it can only come as you cooperate with God and open your hands and start giving it out. Generosity is what God is calling us to that allows him then to be extra measure generous into us. And not just for this world, but for the world to come. That's what he's getting at here. You actually have to cooperate with God. You have to move into this. And this is interesting to think about, gosh, Lord, I actually have a say in my future experience, eternal experience. There's something I play into that. Now, I don't know what it looks like to get to heaven. If you've stored up a lot of treasures there, do you get like a money bag? Do you get a bigger house? I don't know. But I'll tell you this, you get more joy. It's going to be a product of joy. There's going to be something in which there's going to be just a filling up of your cup. Maybe it's not so much that you have a bigger house, but maybe you have a bigger heart cup of joy, and that God is dumping into that, and you're experiencing more. I don't know, but Jesus alludes that there's something you store up in heaven. Multiple places, he alludes to that by your generosity, by your actions and lifestyle here, that you actually are building for yourself something there. And I don't know what that looks like, but I know it's good. I know it's amazing. And I know I won't look back and say, oh, this wasn't worth the investment. Because Jesus even said, on this earth, here's the standard I play by. On this earth, he says a little earlier, give and it'll be given. Good measured, pressed down, shaken together, running over, for with the measure you use, it will be measured back to you. That's for this world. I don't know if I believe that always, because I'm a little stingy. If I really believe that, I'd be like, oh, dude, here you go. Because here's the image for you. As long as your hands are clenched around your money or your stuff like this, you don't have them open to receive what God wants to dump into them. Now, when they're open, you're in danger of someone taking that from you or giving it back to you in worse shape, but you also don't have your hands open to receive from God. And I want my hands open for him. If you close yourself off to generosity, you close yourself off to generosity. So we are to not so much pursue with the same passion, it's an unequal passion, pursue being rich toward God and leverage all that you have here to be as rich toward God as you can. How do you do that? Be generous. But what gets in the way of generosity? It's worry. Back to the beginning of the message. It's worry. It's anxiety, which drives you to ask, how can I get more? Jesus knows that worry kills generosity and it fuels greed. And so he knows after he tells that story about be generous, he's got to say something about their anxiety. So he says in verse 22, how do you battle your worry and anxiety so you can be generous? He said, therefore I tell you, if you want to be rich toward God, you're going to have to battle your anxiety. Do not be anxious about your life, because you're going to be. That dollars will go out and you're going to say, man, I could have gotten this with that. And what does this mean for my future if this is gone? You'll feel the anxiety. What will you eat? You'll think, what will you eat? Or about your body, what you will put on. You're going to have to fight those things. Full frontal attack against anxiety. And it's won by you just leaning into Jesus. You leaning into God. And here's what it says in verse 31. Instead, seek his kingdom and these things will be added to you. What? Do you really believe that? That's where I just don't know if I believe it. Will that be added? Maybe not as good as I gave away. Oh no, pressed down, shaken, fully overflowing. Fear not, he says, because this is your natural inclining. Little flock. No matter if you're 80 years old in here, you're a little flock. Fear not, little flock, because your issues haven't changed. You're still worried. Worry has no age limit. Fear has no age limit. You could be 12 and you could be 85. You could be on death's door and you could be just new to this world, and worry and fear are there. Fear not, little flock. For it is the Father's good pleasure, not begrudging, but good pleasure, to give you the kingdom. To give you the kingdom. He wants to do that. And it's not come by you going out in the world and building your own kingdom. It comes by you releasing this world's kingdom and letting him give you his. So here's the question then. What if that last statement we really lean into? What if, God, this year, I'm not going to outgive you. I'm not going to beat you to the punch. You're trustworthy. What if we lean into that? And what if you replace your natural leading question of when you get worried of how can I get more money with this one? Why do I have more than I need? What if whenever you hear the question come up, how can I get more money because there's some worry attached to it, you can, wait, okay, let me stop and lead with this one. Why do I have more than I need? Because every one of us in here, I say this with confidence, have more than we need. We do. Why do I have more than I need? Reflect on that. Turn to the Lord and then move forward. Not with a heart of worry, but with a heart of gratitude. Let me pray. God, we're going to be singing a song, It Is Well. And God, that is a song that we need to speak to our hearts with strength and with declaration, because my heart is prone to worry, and it's prone to even think, things aren't well. So I have to be worried. I have to think about how do I secure my environment, because you're not as trustworthy as you say you are. And I pray, God, this morning, I pray that you would remind us through events, remind us through people, that just from your word here, God, you would instill in us a sense that, you are trustworthy, that you've got us, and that out from that would flow generosity like we have, many of us in here haven't experienced to this point. And this year would be a watershed year in which it is not marked by worry, but by generosity and giving and joy. And I pray. Amen.